Everyone talks about Josh Duggar's prison time. They talk about the sentence, the cell, the release date that's still years away. They talk about the family fallout, the marriage, the children growing up without him. But almost nobody is talking about what this conviction actually costs him in dollars. And once you sit down and add it up, piece by piece, the number is bigger than you'd think. A lot bigger. So today on Jenny Exposes, we're not talking about the prison. We're talking about the bill. The money nobody talks about, the fines, the assessments, the legal fees, the income that vanished overnight, and the obligations that don't expire when his sentence does. Pull up a chair. We're following the money on Josh Duggar, and by the end of this video, you're going to see his case from an angle nobody on YouTube is showing you. Smash that like button if you've ever wondered what a conviction like this really costs a person, and let's get into it. Here's the thing about high-profile cases like this one. The cameras follow the verdict. The headlines follow the sentencing. The clicks follow the courtroom photos. And then, slowly, the attention drifts away. People move on. New scandals show up. New families crack open in public. And while everyone's looking somewhere else, the financial machine just keeps running quietly in the background. The bills don't stop coming. The legal meter keeps ticking. The obligations keep stacking up. And what I want to do in this video is something most channels won't bother with. I want to follow the money. Not the drama, not the speculation, not the gossip. Just the actual dollars and cents. Because honestly, the financial fallout outlasts most people's attention span by years. And I think the full picture deserves to be laid out. So let's start small, and let's build the tally up from there. The first number on the board is the fine. When Josh Duggar was sentenced, the judge attached a $10,000 fine to that sentence. Now, $10,000. To most people watching this, that's a meaningful amount of money. It's a used car, it's a few months of rent in a lot of cities, it's a real chunk of savings. But in the context of a federal criminal case, a $10,000 fine is actually on the lower end of what the court could have ordered. Federal sentencing guidelines for the kind of conviction we're talking about allow for much, much larger fines. So when you see $10,000, you might think, okay, that's the whole financial story. But that fine is just the doorway. It's the first item on a much longer receipt. And here's where things get interesting, because the very next line item is something most people have never even heard of. It's called a special assessment. And in Josh Duggar's case, the special assessment is more than 4 times the size of the fine itself. Let me explain what a special assessment even is, because nobody covers this. A special assessment is a mandatory fee that federal courts attach to certain types of convictions. It's not a fine in the traditional sense. A fine is punishment. A special assessment is more like a required contribution that goes into specific federal funds, usually funds set up to support victims of crime. There's a baseline special assessment of $100 per felony count that gets attached to almost every federal felony conviction. But in cases involving certain offenses, including the kind Josh Duggar was convicted of, Congress has added additional mandatory special assessments on top of that baseline. There's one assessment under a law commonly known by the initials JVTA, which adds $5,000. And there's another assessment, often called the AVAA assessment, that can add up to $35,000 on top of that. Add those up, plus the standard $100 count assessment, and you arrive at $40,100. $40,100. That's the number reported in his case. So the special assessment alone is more than the fine and the average American's annual salary in some states put together. And we're still just getting started. Now here's where I have to walk really carefully, because the next piece of the financial picture involves the concept of restitution, and I want to explain it cleanly without overstating anything specific to his case. In federal cases involving there's a body of law that allows victims to seek restitution from people convicted of these offenses. The idea is that the harm caused to the victims, the people in the images, doesn't end when the image is created. Every time that material is downloaded, possessed, or distributed, the harm extends further. So the law allows those victims to pursue financial restitution from people convicted of crimes connected to that material, even when the convicted person never met the victim and never directly created the original abuse. Restitution amounts can vary widely. They can be a few $1,000s per victim. They can be much more. I'm not going to throw out a specific number for Josh Duggar's case, because the public reporting on his restitution situation is genuinely limited. And I'm not in the business of making numbers up. But what I want you to understand is that restitution is a real category of financial obligation in cases like this. It's separate from fines and assessments, and it's something that follows a person beyond their prison sentence. Restitution debts don't disappear when the cell door opens. They follow you out into the world. So we've got the fine, we've got a special assessment, we've got the possibility of restitution sitting on the table. Already, we're well into the tens of thousands of dollars before we've even touched the part of the financial fallout that's actually the biggest. And this is where I have to ask you, do you have any idea what a federal criminal defense actually costs? Because the fines might not even be the biggest number on this list. Not even close. Let me show you why. When you are facing federal charges of this kind, you don't hire your neighborhood lawyer. You hire specialists. You hire teams. You hire experts. You hire investigators. You hire people who know how to push back on federal prosecutors, and those people do not work for free. Josh Duggar's defense involved a high-profile attorney, court filings that ran on for months, expert witnesses, pretrial motions, the trial itself, a sentencing phase, and then, after the conviction, an appeal that went all the way up to the federal appeals court. And after that appeal, there was a motion to vacate the conviction. Each of those phases is its own financial event. The trial alone, for a case of this complexity, can easily run into the high six figures in attorney fees. 6 figures, plural. The appeal adds more on top of that. Expert witnesses charge by the hour, and they charge serious money. Investigators bill for their time. Every motion filed, every brief written, every hour of preparation, every hour in court, every hour on the phone with the client, all of it gets billed. So when you hear that someone has fought a federal conviction for years through trial, appeal, and a motion to vacate, you are looking at a legal bill that could easily run into 7 figures by the time it's all said and done. That defense, as the saying goes, is not cheap. And remember, every dollar spent on lawyers is a dollar that's not available to pay fines, assessments, or restitution. It's not a separate stream of money. It's the same shrinking pile. And speaking of shrinking, let's talk about the income side of this equation, because this is where the math really starts to bite. When Josh Duggar was incarcerated, his ability to earn meaningful income essentially stopped. Federal inmates can work jobs inside the prison, but those jobs pay in cents per hour, not dollars, cents. We're talking about wages that, for a full month of work, might add up to less than what most of you spend on a single grocery run. So while the bills are still coming in on the outside, the income from the inside is functionally zero. But the income story didn't start there. It started before he ever walked into that federal facility. Once the charges hit, his career options collapsed. The brand that he had built on the back of the family television fame, the connections, the public appearances, the deals, all of it dried up. The television opportunities were already gone after earlier scandals. The car dealership work was already in the rearview mirror, and after the federal conviction, anything resembling a public-facing career was off the table for the foreseeable future. So picture it this way. Income vanished, obligations stayed. The money stopped while the bills kept coming. That is the financial trap that conviction creates, and it doesn't unwind just because someone eventually walks out of a federal facility. Now, this brings us to the question that I know a lot of you have been thinking about as I've been talking. How does a single-income household with 7 children actually function when the breadwinner is incarcerated? And I want to handle this part really carefully, because there is a huge difference between reporting on what's been documented publicly and speculating about things that haven't. So let me stick to what's actually been reported. It's been documented that members of the extended family have helped on the housing side. There have been reports indicating that family-connected property arrangements have provided some stability for Anna Duggar and the children during this period. Beyond that, the specifics of how that household budget actually works on a month-to-month basis is not something that has been transparently shared with the public. And I'm not going to invent numbers or assume things about how anyone is making ends meet. What I will say is this: a single-income household with a stay-at-home mother, 7 children, and the income earner removed from the equation has to lean on something. Whether that something is family support, community help, savings, or other arrangements, the basic financial physics of that situation are real. Removing the income from a family of that size does not just disappear. The shortfall has to be filled somehow. And whatever is filling it is itself a kind of hidden financial cost of this case, even if it's not landing on Josh Duggar's personal balance sheet directly. So let's pull back the camera and look at the big picture. Because once you stack all of this together, the scale of the financial fallout really hits you. You've got a $10,000 fine. You've got a $40,100 special assessment. You've got the potential for restitution obligations on top of all of that, which could add meaningfully to the total. You've got legal costs that, between the original trial, the federal appeal, and the post-conviction motion to vacate, could easily run into the high six figures, or even into seven figures, depending on the full scope of what was paid out across all those phases. You've got the complete collapse of meaningful earning power for the duration of his incarceration, which on its own represents a massive amount of lost income, year over year, for someone who was previously visible enough to monetize that visibility. And you've got the indirect costs to the household, whatever those may look like, that are a downstream consequence of all of the above. When you put all of that together, you're looking at something that is not just a fine or a sentence. You're looking at a financial earthquake. And here's the part that really gets me. That earthquake doesn't end when his release date arrives. The restitution obligations, if they exist in his case, can follow him. The legal bills, depending on how they were structured and paid, can leave aftershocks. The career path back to meaningful income is incredibly steep for someone with this conviction on their record. Whatever life looks like for Josh Duggar when he eventually walks out of federal custody, it does not look like a fresh financial start. It looks like a balance sheet that has been carrying serious damage for years, and that will continue carrying damage for years after that. That's the part I really wanted you to walk away with today. Most of the conversation about high-profile convictions stops at the sentencing. The cameras leave the courthouse, the headlines move on, and the financial story just keeps unfolding quietly in the background where almost nobody bothers to look. But the financial story is, in many ways, the longest-running part of a case like this. It outlasts the news cycle. It outlasts the prison sentence. It shapes the rest of a person's life and the lives of everyone connected to that person. And once you actually sit down and add it up, like we just did, the bill is much, much bigger than the public conversation makes it sound. We're talking about a multi-layered financial weight that includes the cash that goes to the court, the cash that may go to victims, the cash that went to lawyers, the income that never came in, and the indirect costs absorbed by a family of 9. That is not a small picture. That is a financial earthquake, and the aftershocks are going to keep coming for a very long time. So now I want to hear from you. Did you realize the bill was this big? Did the special assessment number surprise you? Was the legal cost piece the one that made your jaw drop? Or did you already know all of this and you're sitting there thinking, finally, somebody's actually talking about the money? Drop a comment and tell me what surprised you the most. I read the comments, I respond when I can, and your reactions absolutely shape what I cover next. Speaking of next, I'm working on a follow-up that goes even deeper into what life on the outside actually looks like, financially and otherwise, for someone in a situation like this one. And you don't want to miss it. So while you're down there in the comments, hit that subscribe button if you're not already part of the Jenny Exposes family. Smash that like button to help this video reach more curious minds, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourself out there.